But first, let me just introduce our panelists. So, Rebecca Minkoff, she's the co-founder and creative director of Rebecca Minkoff, the global lifestyle brand. I think we're all familiar. So apparel, handbags, accessories, footwear, jewelry. She is also the co-founder of Female Founder Collective, which is, you may not have heard of this, but it's a platform and community dedicated to promoting and uplifting women-owned businesses. So check it out. And then Sallie Krawcheck, who is the founder and CEO of Ellevest. Sallie is a Wall Street trailblazer. She has more than 25 years of experience in the financial services industry, and she was the CEO of Merrill Lynch, Smith Barney, Citi Private Bank, prior to founding Ellevest, which is a digital investment platform designed to help women take control of their investments. And it's not just focused on the investment portion. It's really also about educating and really helping bring women along and make them more active in the investment process. So let's kick it off, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right. Okay. When I think about FFC and Ellevest, you guys were leaning into a gap that you saw. Maybe you were creating something that you were missing. And so maybe we can just talk about that a little bit. Like, Sallie, maybe let's talk about your contrarian stance and what you saw was missing in the investment industry and how you decided to bring that into your vision for Ellevest.
And thank you for having us, Sarah, and thank you all for being here. I would make one slight correction to what you said,
okay.
Which is that Ellevest started as an investment platform. We remain one, but we're also a wealth management platform, really focused on helping women as they become successful and are successful, invest in other women, with the point of view that nothing bad happens when women have more money. We talk about the gender, it's true, like nothing, like literally nothing, like literally nothing. The economy grows, societies are fairer, families are better off, climate change is better off because we're more likely to believe in it and more likely to donate, and nonprofits are better off. Politics, anybody here super duper happy with where government is right now? Really pleased? Because if you step back, women have 30 cents of wealth to a white man's dollar, and we give 30 cents in political donations to a white man's dollar. For me, that's all she wrote. And so when I looked at this and said, gee, we're paying all this attention to the pay gap, important stuff, but there's this wealth gap that's getting worse, that's worse and getting worse. What is driving this? In part, what's been driving it is that women don't invest as much as men do. Investing is an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. It is the scalable way to build wealth. It's, for some in this group, you may be thinking, oh, I'll start my business, I'll grow my wealth. Absolutely fantastic, good luck. I'm talking about scalable and predictable. That if you had historically invested in the stock market and left it in there for 10 years, through good times and bad, you had a 98% chance of a positive return. 99% if it's 15 years, and 100% if you were making a recurring deposit. You could have invested on any day. And so we looked at this and said, why aren't women investing? In my old industry, said, well, we know why. Everybody knows women are risk averse, right? Everybody knows women aren't as good at math as the guys are. Everybody knows women need more financial education. Everybody knows it's their fault. They just need to come to us, the investing and wealth management industry, and we will take, and change how they interact, and we'll take care of it. And Ellevest was the first that said, maybe that's not true because women are as good at math or better. We may need more financial education, but no more than the guys do. It isn't that we don't want to invest. It's that nobody, in my opinion, have built anything for us with a real focus on investment returns, but also impact returns for us, where we don't want to give up one, but we want it without the other. And so when we launched, my old colleagues in the industry was like, it's absolutely going to fail because other people have had marketing programs for women before and invited them for cocktail parties and it didn't work, so therefore this will fail too. But we're at $1.8 billion. that's telling us we've really tapped into something.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, before I forget, I just noticed 2 of my colleagues are here. Emily Green, who runs our private wealth business. Wave, Emily, please. And Cam Rogers, who's one of our terrific financial advisors in the private wealth business.
So go find
Yes.
those 2 incredible women.
That is
Yes.
what I was so subtly doing, like go find those 2 incredible women.
Yeah. Well, okay, so female investors, really critical, underserved population. And of course, that personally resonates with me. Rebecca, can you just talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial side of the coin and how FFC as a platform is catering to those unmet needs?
Yeah, so at Female Founder, can you hear me? Yes? No,
Are you on?
I'm on, but it's not working. Maybe they can make it louder. I'll project. So at Female Founder Collective, it was truly started out of sheer frustration to the wage gap that Sallie mentioned, coming off. I feel like I'm tinks right now. Coming out of, panel after panel, women speaking like us and saying, did anyone in the audience make more because of what we said? And not being able to measure that, or not being able to measure the impact a company who doesn't have their name on it is making, are women preferring to go to Don's Coffee versus Starbucks. So it was a multi-pronged approach to make a recognizable and shoppable seal that you would know you were supporting a woman-owned business. It was also the idea of all of the education that you find you need when you're like, I have this great idea and I have a passion for launching dental floss, right? There was a woman at the dinner, I don't think I see her here. But then you encounter, I don't know anything about CRM or where do I put my money and how do I get a return on my investment and fundraising. There's so many things that you don't know. I didn't know them as a designer, I'll tell you that. And so could we provide that education from women that have built it, failed, built it again, lived it, breathed it, to these women to ensure their success so then they can give all of their money to Sallie. And they made it. So that was what FFC was built out to really educate, have a community of all these women, because you can always share your tips, tricks, and roadblocks with each other. And then thereby also be recognized as a woman-owned business and have people support you.
Awesome. I mean, so education is a very powerful tool that we can use to empower women. Relatedly, I mean, I think education and mentorship are really closely tied together, and you both have these incredible career arcs. And mentorship is, from my perspective, just another unmet need where it's such a critical part of a woman's pathway through her career. Can you talk about the role that mentorship has played in your careers? Whether good or bad, whether it was there or it was missing, and kind of how that has informed how you think about it today?
I think that today, some people assume mentorship is, can I just have a coffee and pick your brain? Mm-hmm. And for people that have built something that is not a good use of their time or yours, I'll always tell someone, listen to everything that woman has ever said on a podcast or TEDx speech or whatever, and then be very specific about what you need. What is the thing that this person can solve for you? Because hearing my life story and how I built my business is not going to make how you approach yours successful. So I always, say to women, ask for what you need very succinctly. And that mentorship to me in my life was a lot of doors being slammed in my face and women saying, no, figure it out, and not handing something to me. So I always say to a woman, like, what can that woman solve for you? And just ask her for that one thing, because she's busy, she's got kids, she's got a career, and if she can do it quickly, that's what you need to get to the next level. So really assessing all the weak points that person is perfect for.
So I think what you're talking about is turning mentorship into something tangible and into sponsorship. So if you think about mentors as those people who will advise you and guide you and answer your questions, and sponsorship is those people who get stuff done for you, not all the time, not even that often, but those points when it's a promotion and I need somebody to be pounding the table for me, or I'm raising money and I need money. Women today are over-mentored. There are too many mentorship programs where we get our questions answered, and we're under-sponsored. There are too many people who are fighting for us in that room. And so what I think we're both saying in different ways is, you know, you need to cultivate your network. You need to give and give and give. You want to be a giver. And then you need to find those points in which you take, in which they have been primed to help you. And it can be game-changing when you do it. And by not doing it, you're unfortunately at a pretty big disadvantage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's advocate, the distinction between mentorship and advocacy is a big one for me. But I'm hearing what you're talking about, what I think you're both talking about is like, how do I advocate for myself? And how do I galvanize people to advocate for me when I'm not in the room? Which to me is really what sponsorship is all about. And actually, Sallie, I appreciate you just like going there with funding, because funding is kind of what we've been talking about all day in this room. It's just it's a real struggle for a lot of folks out there right now. Where we are seeing it in our practice, and I'm sure you guys are both seeing it from your vantage point. So can we just talk about funding for a minute? And I know everybody knows the funding rates are just shocking. They're abysmal. And yet, female-founded businesses return, greater returns with less resources, do so much more with a dollar. It's been shown in study after study. So can we just talk a little bit about like personal founding journey? Sallie, you raised a $53 million round last April, or 2 Aprils ago, so 18 months ago. Maybe talk a little bit about that process and just what it took.
Well, so the percent of venture dollars that women in the financial services and fintech area get make the regular numbers look like heaven. So whereas women CEOs get 2% of venture dollars, over my way, where you get to the Series B financial services fintech, it's one of every $10,000. It is, and it's very difficult to find women who are writing big checks. I found one, and she passed, but that's a different story. So it's a wasteland out there, and it's very hard within Ellevest. If a lot of men, well, why don't they go to Merrill? Why don't they go to Goldman? Why don't they go to, Personal Capital? And you're like, we have the solution. They don't. Mm-hmm. So we can keep debating that they should, but we have a solution, and the numbers are good, and the numbers are working, and we're growing. It was discouraging. There was actually an evening, in fact, I was in LA one evening when I got I think a no from this woman. And I remember sitting down in a chair, and a very odd thing happened. There was some warm liquid that leaked from my eye, and it just kept leaking. And I was all by myself, and I was going to take a little weekend in LA, and it was like, this is rock bottom. And all credit to Halogen and Jesse Draper.
Yes, Halogen. Okay, we have to take a minute to just say thank you to Halogen. Halogen, Jennifer, can you please just wave at everybody? Okay, so Halogen is female-run, invest in women in consumer and future of the family, and they are our co-hosts tonight. So we're just really happy to have Jennifer from Halogen here. Halogen is,
So let me tell you about Halogen. Yeah. So we've got our lead, we've got some dollars in. It is slow going. And you know what happens when it starts to get slow going? Then people who are in are like, why is it so slow going? You're like, did you know it's $1 in $10,000, right? Like, it's going to take me a few minutes over here. But it's getting a little, in the markets. This is in late 21 and into 22. So the markets are beginning to crack.
Down.
Our business is doing well. And we then had Halogen and a few others reach out and say, we want to. Jesse actually stalked me, which was lovely.
This is the way she tells the story too, by the way.
She stalked me. Jesse, she went to an event I was speaking to in LA. She turned up, I think, uninvited. And was like, I want to invest in Ellevest. I'm obsessed. We can put in this much. Can we also form a special purpose vehicle and bring in women who can't meet the minimum? And I'm like, what is that? And it'll count as one investor on your cap table. And so you're going to have people who are going to be investing $50,000, $10,000, $75,000.
And I'm like, wait, I think this could be it, because there's crowdfunding, which doesn't raise enough, institutional, which is difficult. Is there this middle ground? And someone from that SPV, and she said, we'll need you to do a call, a Zoom, if you don't mind. I'm like, I could work that into my calendar. So someone in that SPV said, you know what, I have some friends who could want him. And someone in that SPV said, I have some friends. And someone else said, I have some friends. And, Cam here in New York is plugged into the venture community. And we folks came in through her, came in through Emily, reached out to us. And the next thing I knew, we'd raised 53 friggin' million bucks. Never been done before. So, thank you. So unusual that I was actually invited to and did testify to the House Financial Services Committee in a testimony that was titled "How to De-Broify FinTech." And so, look, you got to find a way to play a different game. And the lesson for me, which is easier said than done, is that what did not work for us was going to people who, invest in the Series B and trying to convince them of our view of the world. What worked was going to people who had our view of the world and finding a way to help them to invest in our Series B. And that's how we overcame an obstacle that I don't think not many women-run fintechs have done.
Mm-hmm. I'm really intrigued by this because this is a theme that's been coming up on the investor side of our practice, which is how do we give more access to female LPs who may need, smaller minimums, right? So if the minimum's 5 million, can we create like a sidecar fund that just invests pro rata alongside the main fund and just lower the minimum down to 250,000, because that's a wealth generator for women.
Totally.
And we need access to that on the funder side as well.
Right. That's exactly right. And then it's a virtual cycle.
Right.
If women have more money, they're investing more money, more women-run businesses get funded, on and on.
Exactly. Rebecca, talk to us a little bit about your kind of past experience with funding, and how did you kind of bring that lens into the FFC platform? Because I imagine there's a lot of just frank discussion of funding challenges and opportunities, and amongst the community.
So venture capital was not a path that anyone took or pursued when I started my company. You just started a company, and it was my brother's credit card, and then it was my brother's house.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we got a factor, which within the fashion industry, they will finance your purchase orders, they will credit check your vendors. So when you're dealing with big department stores, again, pre-direct to consumer, so I'm going to date myself a bit. They say, yeah, you can ship to Saks. No, you can't. They haven't paid their other vendors in a couple months, so don't ship. So, by the credit checking and the advanced purchase orders, they took us to a certain level. They had said to us in the beginning, when you hit 5 million, you'll be profitable and you should sell the company then. And I was like, yes, let's do it. The pain of not having money, or not that cycle of you can't afford to grow, you need the funds, was killing me. And my brother said, we're not selling the company when we hit 5 million. We're just getting started. And thank God we held on. So we took private equity 7 years later. We bootstrapped, with this factor the whole time. And we sold 26% of the company, and they had one board seat. They had no rights except for drag rights later down the line, which was a terrible thing that we agreed to. But we didn't know what we didn't know. And so I will always tell a founder, again, I'm assuming most of you are in the tech space, so disregard. If you are someone who has a product or a consumer company and you're not going to have that crazy high growth, there is nothing wrong with building slowly and profitably. There is nothing wrong. And we sometimes glorify the people on the cover of magazines. She raised $1 billion but like, I met a woman who was a clothing designer. She's like, I'm raising money. I was like, why? Get product market fit. Make a couple blouses and sell them and see what happens. And so I think we have to go back to Main Street USA. Like, small businesses are great. Small business is a $25 million and below company. So I will say to women, get product market fit, get heat behind your brand, get people coming to you, and you'll sell so much less of your company and retain so much more control, because not all companies are meant to be $1 billion or $100 million. And so you could be selling everything and then being left with nothing at the end. And so I kind of, with FFC, my co-founder came with a lot of venture experience and she wants to raise or wanted to raise. And I was like, oh no, we are not raising. I am not going through this process. So we've bootstrapped FFC. And now we're hitting a point where we're like, okay, good. We're 5 years old. We have 25,000 members. Maybe now's the time to look at, what we would do with capital and how we could deploy that smartly. But I've held on to the point of driving her crazy and or keeping our internal organization probably too lean. And so now we're looking, but you don't all have to, just give everything away in the beginning. It's great to have people excited about your product when it's selling, it's working.
Well, let's keep going with that theme, right? Strings attached to capital, because I think that's probably something you can both speak about, Sallie, probably both from the investor side and from the entrepreneurial side, and your own personal experience with that in terms of building your business and how you kind of make peace with it.
Yeah. Well, we've been fortunate to have good lawyers, and so not have, terms that are off market, making sure, and that's a place where it can hurt us as women. If you don't have a lot of friends who've raised money, then how do you know that this term is something you're going to come to regret later? How do you know the valuation is way off? The funders on one side have all the information. They see all the, they all share the decks and stuff, right? They're investing together, so they all know what the terms are, but as an entrepreneur, it can be tough. So I think getting a great lawyer, networking with folks who are in, similar industries, sort of to figure out what the terms are. But one of the benefits we've had, again, of this approach that we took of having the SPVs is, I'm so jealous sometimes. I was on a call. I was reading an article the other day, and someone said, went to a board meeting, just raised a round, went to a board meeting, coming out of the board meeting, one of our investors was like, hey, could you use extra capital? Let me write you a check. I'm like, does that happen? That sounds like really great that happens. That being said, if you have those big investors, you work for them. You work for them. The approach that we've taken, we don't, of course we work for our investors, but we don't have anybody there with sort of the thumb on the dial for us that we have to, sort of kowtow to. So I think a benefit of what we do is we're able to build the business in a way that's really true to what we want to be, sort of make the mistakes. The flip side is I don't have anybody who's going to write us a big check.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I add something?
Please.
I think that a lot of the women I meet think that the money is going to solve all the stress and all the problems.
No.
Thank you. So, just a couple of examples. If the private equity firm that had invested in us had the rights to certain things, in the board meeting they said, close down shoes, close down men's, close your stores, close down clothing, just do bags. Had we done that, we wouldn't be a brand. We probably wouldn't exist, right? So I think you think it can solve problems, or even my brother being CEO, he should be focused on the company. And instead, he was focused on our 4 times a year board meetings where he needed to make a 50-page deck about the business. So he could never focus on the business. And so, maybe you don't have a co-founder. So then you're not focusing on the business because you're trying to raise money, or you are kowtowing to some of these people. They're like, I gave you money, I want to see results. So you just have to weigh, when is that right time? And do you have the bandwidth to do that? And is it going to be worth it? And then when you take the money, who are you beholden to?
Well, there's that, and I'll just add, we are women. And so we just feel, except for you, sir, we just feel, I feel this obligation to people who bet on us. And so in addition to, the smaller investors who we have, for whom this is meaningful, we've got investors like Melinda Gates. And Penny, we were her, to the best of my knowledge, her first direct investment. And for some period of time, her only direct investment. And you don't want to let her down. You don't, right? Penny Pritzker, the former Secretary of Commerce, at one point, when we did an earlier round, I sort of sat back one night and I said, who's our ideal investor? And it was her. And she allowed me a meeting 2 days later. I don't want to let her down. So when I wake up at 3:30 in the morning that's the thing that, is just really important that you're successful. Whereas I've had other businesses that I've been involved in and started where we didn't take outside money. And I'm like, if I lose the money that I put in, it's going to suck, but it's not, it's not going to be the end of the world. You lose someone else's money, you can really feel it.
I'm thinking about you being one of the 10 to 12 women in that room, right, across, a portfolio of more than 100 investments, and what you just described. Hundreds. Excuse me, hundreds. And what you just described is like this burden of having to prove something or having to do right? Having to do right by your investors. And I want to just get into that a little bit more, right? That I guess the tokenism in that, and the pressure to be a model citizen, a model woman in fintech founder. Can you just talk a little bit about how you do rise to the occasion every day, like as founders? What are some of the concrete strategies that you're employing, like in your practice every day? How do you kind of keep going, one foot in front of the other every day?
I don't know. I just do. I am getting a little tired of having to be better. It gets exhausting after a while. I mean, the research is just completely clear about this. And it almost feels like we gloss it over, like, okay, there's this patriarchy, in which the cards are stacked against us. And if you're a person or woman of color, even more. So how do you manage it? I'm like, I'm tired of managing it. I want to be as good as the mediocre white guy next to me. Like, that's what I want. I want to be a slacker. I'm off on a tangent now, but I recently went to, have you heard about the ranch at Malibu, where you like hike for 4.5 hours and you go vegan and you can't drink and no caffeine and it's like a fortune, right? But I went, and I remember one of the, it's a group of 20 that goes. It was awful but amazing. And one of the guys was, at the end of it was like, isn't that interesting? All the women who were here, there's probably 12 women and 8 guys, are type A. And I'm like, of course we are. What type B slacker woman do you think is getting enough money to go to the ranch at Malibu? Right? Of course, we have to be. Like, we have to be better all the time on everything. And I'm just a little, I don't know what to do, except we keep going. I've got a fantastic team of people who are deeply passionate about what we're doing and are top of their field. You surround yourself with that. We have a vision. We understand that if we're not doing this, no one else has stepped up to do it. We know, and this has particularly been important over the past week, with all the terrible things going on in the world, that what we're doing actually helps make things better. And so we operate at a very high level and just know that we have to. We're a little bit of adrenaline junkies, I'm going to be honest. But, I think the real question is how does the patriarchy going to change? And when is it going to start to change? Mm-hmm. Not anytime soon.
I had a thought the other night, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but
doesn't matter.
I was, I was on yet another talk, and they were talking about men taking risks and not having it all figured out, and women make sure they have everything figured out and buttoned up before they take the risk. And sometimes I like to go back to 10,000 years of humanity. Of course, men take risks. They had to go protect the cave, okay, and go out without knowing what the hell was out there, a bear, whatever, and just blindly be brave, right? And we were traditionally inside protecting the children and making sure everything was safe. You have to probably imagine that we're still hardwired to that degree. And it's only been 100 years, really, of women truly working in the workforce. It might take some time to undo these DNA strands that make us protect and make it perfect before we go out. But it also doesn't mean we have to go out and be and act like them. We can be successful and create it differently. We can reimagine, we might not ever change the hardwiring in the patriarchy, but we can continue to thrive and succeed and create it in our own way and bring some of these nurturing and protective and, wanting to keep things safe skills to our benefit. But it requires creativity and persistence and being strong. But
so the right answer is we have to support each other. It just is. I mean, I love to say we've been socialized to play business as an individual sport. Like everybody buys the books that tell you how you can ask for the raise or you can be not too hard but not too soft and all that stuff. The men are playing the game as a team sport, and they're funding each other and investing in each other and putting each other on the boards and talking each other up. And in corporate America, the research is clear that we women got knocked back for supporting other women. That if you're a woman who promoted a woman, if you were a person of color who promoted a person of color, it actually hurt you historically in corporate America. We need to break through that and make sure that we are as wholeheartedly supporting each other, even if she, even if it may not be quite her turn, even if she's a little obnoxious, even if it's a little bit riskier, not waiting for that perfect moment, but really from our hearts supporting each other, because that's the way to be successful.
Mm-hmm. So, Rebecca, you were talking about, this decision to seek funding for FFC and potentially build out the team. And, Sallie, you talked about the importance of a team. So maybe we could just get into the nitty-gritty of how you guys think about team building and how do you leverage your team? How do you promote women within your team? Because, I'm looking for concrete tips and strategies around how I can lean in more with my team. How can I promote women on my team? How can I put them forward?
I would say that, we are a day-to-day team of 7 individuals at FFC. We're probably looking to scale it to, 15. And we have no choice but to invest and promote the team we have because they've been there almost since the beginning. But just to give, by way of example, I had a woman that was working as a receptionist at Rebecca Minkoff, and she was complaining about how the PR team was understaffed and could she help? And we said yes. She went onto that team, and then she would talk bad all day about how my assistant was terrible. And my brother was tired of hearing her complain. He said, then you take the job. And she said, I will. And FFC was literally launched out of me talking to her and being like, we need to do a photo shoot. We need to find 10 founders. And we blah, 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 blah. And she was like, yep, got it. And now she runs the organization of FFC, And so when you look at promoting women, I look for the, yes, I can do it. I'm tired of the fucking quiet quitting. I'm tired of this is not in my job description. I am tired of these are my boundaries. When you are building something and you are signing up for a ride, that is what you are signing up to do. You're there to be in the very beginning at the grassroots, all in. If you want the boundaries and the quiet quitting, go work for corporate America. But I think all you guys all have startups, and it takes everything you have in the beginning. And it takes that grit and dedication. So try and find those people. They exist. They're harder to find, but they do exist. And what you can't give in salary, can you give in equity? Can you give in profit sharing? Can you incentivize them in other ways in the beginning? Because, that's what we had to do, frankly, is say, we can't pay you a whole ton, but here's equity or our profit sharing pool, or, there are other upsides. She lived in Chile for 4 years. I had no idea. This was before remote was okay. I was like, I guess go, because I want to invest in you and I don't want to lose you. And so you get creative during those times. And so that's how I look to make sure these women feel good.
Mm-hmm. So at Ellevest, I'll tell you, we are 85% women. We are about 50% people of color. So we have, what the research tells you is for startups that the diversity is set at about 12 or 13 employees. And it typically is that way because, as a scrappy startup, you're using your networks in order to bring people in. So if you are all white guys at that stage, you're probably going to be all white guys for forever. In terms of, I think as we get bigger and you're thinking about diversity and how you advance it, I think we're often asking the wrong question or looking for the wrong thing. And it is typical when you're filling a position to say, of course, I want the best person for the job, or you're promoting someone, I need the best person for the job. I think what we should be looking at instead is who is the best person for the team? Okay, and so it's a subtle difference, but in a world in which we have all grown up, and all of us in the room today, if we're asked, when we're not, we're sort of relaxed, we've had a glass of wine, picture a CEO, you're going to picture a white man. even all of us in the room, because that's how we've been socialized. And so the bias of who is better, particularly if you've got a group that are Ivy League, very analytical, very male, grew up on trading desk, that's going to be the standard of what that best person is. If you switch it to who's the best person for the team, you're going to say, let's not go with that. Here's a news flash in my old industry. Maybe we'll get someone who had B pluses at school and not A pluses. Maybe we'll get someone whose strength isn't math, but maybe is marketing. Maybe get someone who isn't aggressive, but maybe, who isn't a realist, but maybe an optimist, who isn't an extrovert, maybe an introvert. And looking for diversity in every way, recognizing that the power of diversity and the higher returns and the lower risk and the greater innovation that it drives, the power of diversity is actually diversity. And so the very fact, we want to bring in someone who'll bring diversity, by its very fact that strengthens a team. If you're not diverse, you're operating, you're sort of punching below your weight.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about SB 54. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, California SB 54, just picking up on this diversity issue real quick. How many of you guys have heard about this? I'm just curious. Okay,
It's a New York crowd. We don't pay a lot of attention to California.
I know, it's that, that New Yorker magazine cover. Yeah. So California SB 54, this bill was just passed a couple of weeks ago. Mandatory venture capital diversity in the portfolio reporting. Super exciting stuff. Kicks in on March 1st, 2025, which cannot come soon enough for me. But yeah, requiring the VC funds to collect diversity data from their founding teams and then report it out to the state, and then the state makes that available on an anonymized basis. So it's not just venture capital funds, but also their investment advisors, family offices, corporate venture funds, accelerators, incubators, and they're going to measure gender, race, ethnic identity, disability, veteran status, sexual orientation, and residency. So I don't know about you guys, but what I observed during Me Too in 2017 was that pressure for transparency created at the LP level some impetus. Okay, GPs, how's it going? How is your diversity within your portfolio? And we started to see those incremental gains come back. And that the funding was still abysmal. It went from 2.2% to 4.4%. And then it crashed back down again after COVID. But I don't know, I mean, how do you feel about this, Sallie? Are you excited about this? Are you just like, I don't know, I don't think it's gonna make a difference, but curious for your reaction.
I don't know if it'll make a difference. I am 1,000% in favor. The only word you said that I didn't like was anonymized. You saw me flinch, right? I've had one of our VCs is in favor of having the LPs report it out as well, because they're the ones who, the pension plans, et cetera, where I think the further back we can get towards where the real money is, the more that we're able to have an impact and make a difference. So I wish it wasn't anonymized. I wish there was more teeth to it, but beggars can't be choosers.
It's a start. Yeah.
I don't have much to say on this issue other than I think a lot of these companies are going to be moving out of California.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because they probably won't want to report it.
Well, we've got about 10, 15 minutes left. Should we open it up for some questions? All right, let's do it. Go for it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Toby, founder and CEO of Dental Find, which is an AI payment platform that allows people to shop for dental services like cleanings. So great points. I wanted to double click into the comment around how, it's not just like 1 out of 10,000 and like how difficult that is, but then also just like from a POC or people of color founder's perspective, it's even more difficult.
Thank you. So yeah, I was just saying for those of you maybe who couldn't hear me in the back that I wanted to double click on the comment around the stats for women and then overlaying people of color who are women and the funding towards them. And specifically what I wanted to talk about is it relates to some of the current events like you just mentioned, the California 54, SP 54. the recent lawsuits around, say, like Fairless Fund or Hello Alice,
Oh my
and
God.
so
Yeah.
how
Yeah. So the soundbite here. Yeah.
well,
No, go ahead.
love
go for
to
it. Finish
get
your question.
everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone else. Like, yeah, just because I felt like, it's great that we're celebrating maybe the reporting around diverse portfolios, but I guess in my mind it just seems contradictory to like the greater nation's sort of debate around diversity. And so I guess I just wanted to hear thoughts around like maybe what you guys see is the future despite all these like how does that reconcile, like what's going on in California with what's going on nationwide,
Yeah, so just to kind of bring everyone into the conversation who may not have heard about this, but Fearless Fund, it's a micro fund based in Georgia, $5 million fund, really incredible GPs that have prioritized investing specifically in Black women. And they were sued by an activist under, as I understand it, Georgia state constitutional law, and essentially saying, you're discriminating against white men. So I'm just gonna take a moment, take a deep breath. But that's the basis for the lawsuit. And I think, like for me, just as someone who's personally and professionally interested in this trend, there is a huge backlash that we're experiencing. And I think, primarily at the federal level, at the Supreme Court level, and it's empowering, frankly, these activists, conservative activists, to bring these lawsuits, just to really to try to push it up and to see how far we can take this conservative court.
Yeah.
Look, it's not good. Things out there are not good. I honestly cannot, but I mean, the good news about what California is doing, but that is not the trend. And I've been thinking a lot, we're at the 10-year anniversary of Lean In, which I'm a little surprised we didn't have more of sort of a retrospective on it. But that was a watershed moment for so many women. Oh, this is the path forward. In that 10 years, the gender pay gap has been flat. Mm-hmm. The percent of venture funding that women get has been flat at 2%. The percent of women CEOs has gone up, but only barely broken 10% of the S&P 500. The gender wealth gap has gotten worse, and we've had our reproductive rights stripped away. Mm-hmm. That has been the 10 years since, like, this is the way forward. Now, I am a hammer, so everything is a nail. But when I look at this and say, what can I do? What can we do? Money is power. We will not be fully equal with men until we are financially equal with men. That it is true that money is power at a macro basis, who chooses who is elected, who chooses who's on the Supreme Court, and it's true on a micro basis. There is no domestic abuse without financial abuse. To me, in a capitalist society, the answer is, how do we grow women's wealth? That is it. We have been going backwards. So Gloria Steinem, hold on, I'm just getting started here. Gloria Steinem has said, my hero, I think everybody's hero, the big miss of 70s feminism, the big miss was they did not at all focus on building wealth. Because those groups of women came from the left, and that was bourgeois and capitalist, and we're gonna gather ourselves and march, etc. We have been losing ground to men when it comes to money every year since. That is why Ellevest is in existence, because the easiest way to build wealth has been to invest. The most predictable way has been to invest. And the beauty of investing is it compounds. It's money. You earn money on your money. You don't have to work extra hard. You don't have to go out and raise more. You don't have to find product market fit. That is what worked. And particularly, again, in our private wealth offering, if we can take that money, the investment money, and invest it in other women, then you get a double and triple impact from it. But by no means, am I optimistic about what's going on right now. The fact that we were, by the way, one old white guy's vote away from mandated paid parental leave a couple years ago. The guy from West Virginia, one vote away. And that we instead had reproductive rights reversed, is a tragedy and a travesty. Mm-hmm. And so there's a longer, disposition on this. I'm a little surprised we're not marching every day. There's a story. There's a reason behind that. It's because Time's Up, the Women's March got destroyed through social media, through the amplification of people who were not in favor of those organizations, amplifying the hurtful tweets and shares on Facebook that drove them apart. And as a result, we are lacking our Gloria Steinem of this generation. So to my mind, I'm waiting for her and I'm ready to support her. But what I can do right now is how do we all support each other financially? Not mentor, that's fine. How do we take the money that we've got? And we got a lot coming from the men because they die before we do. No, that was not meant to be funny. They do. A lot of it's going to be coming to our older sisters, our mothers, et cetera. How do we catalyze that capital? Because that is the answer.
Other questions?
Hi, Sally and Rebecca. Great points. My name is Pooja. I run a job tech platform for women and also a Women in Startups Collective. You make very, very valuable points. However, one grave and undeniable reality is that a lot of women in this room are going to be raising money from male-oriented platforms. They might be looking for partnerships. They might be hiring women and men. So the question is, how do you go out and address those biases? What's the narrative? What are the nuances? What would be your advice to all the women founders and leaders here?
I can only speak to my personal experience. When I was born, my mom had, I had an older brother, 2 older brothers, and they didn't know I was a girl. And so I was born and she's like, okay, I'm gonna teach her to be tough because she has 2 older brothers. And so I was raised with the mentality of like being not different or other. It was everyone's fighting for the same. And so I think it starts a lot with how you go into those rooms. And I've been in rooms, many rooms with only men for the most of my life, right? All of the people on our board were men, our factoring company, as I mentioned, like 8 old white men, and so I was like, okay, this is when the shoulders get back. This is when you stand taller and you're like, bring it, what? And I think we have to stop, you're going to get told no, and it's going to happen over and over and over again. But the more you can show that confidence, even if you don't have it, and just keep pushing. I'm not saying that it's not going to be uncomfortable, but we've all had to go through a lot of uncomfortable things. And there have been women that have had to do far more uncomfortable things. Sit at the front of a bus, march and get beaten and jailed, right, for freedom. So if all we do is we're just stronger in those rooms and we pretend to have that confidence, it will come. And I've pushed boundaries in those rooms, where I've used feminine energy to my advantage. And I think that, when you can master the art of that and practice it, go in the rooms that you don't care about, the money you don't want, that's your time to practice it.
That's right.
And I'll say a lot. There was an episode of that show that Alex Baldwin was in when he was negotiating with his nanny, right? And she was peeling the orange and he was trying to not give her a raise and she went quiet and she kept peeling the orange. My nanny did that to me, right? And I was like, okay, you want more money? You want more? And so I think the art of also being silent, knowing when not to speak, can be to your advantage. So I don't know if that's helpful, but it's what I learned from my mom and around my brothers. And then being in these rooms with just all men is just, you just stand taller, you put your war paint on and say, and what? Bring it.
Very, very tactically, you may have seen the research that says that men entrepreneurs, about 2/3 of the questions they get in meetings with VCs are positive. What is the upside? What is the potential? For women, 2/3 are negative. What is the risk? What is the downside? And there's a direct correlation between the amount of time you spend talking about risk and the lack of funding that you get. And so just very tactically, when you get those questions, you got to flip it. Obviously, what is the downside? Well, if there's a tough market, we know that Ellevest, will continue to grow because we've seen it continue to grow through tough market. Let me now talk about what the upside is, because the market tends to be upward trending. So in an upward trending market, flip it that way.
Yeah, that study is really powerful. But I think if you go and look for that Harvard Business Review article that really digs into, there's a lot of really concrete strategies for twisting the narrative around. And to your point, Rebecca, like practicing with someone that you trust, an advisor, or even, honestly, like I do this a lot with my clients. Reach out to your lawyer. They'll do it for you non-billable if they're
No, they
lawyer.
won't.
Yes, I do.
No.
Yeah, investor strategy.
What?
Ask. 100%.
Okay.
But why? Why? Because my success is your success, right? We want you guys to get funded. But seriously, like find someone you trust who will give you good feedback in a closed room and practice those concrete strategies of like turning those defensive questions around, making them positive. 100%. Other questions?
Hi, my name is Katie Castillo-Wilson. I'm the founder of Tap On It. We are an SMS and MMS customer engagement platform that I started 9 years ago. So we were super early in the texting space. I raised money early. I raised money from Gannett in 2018. Business doubled year over year, and then COVID hit, and our revenue dropped 80%. I know, it was rough, right? Yeah, that's okay. We were real scrappy. And we pivoted, and now we have a SaaS platform, and we're working with brands of all different sizes. When I raised money early on, I took money from old white men. Oh, by the way, we're based in Iowa. I know, right? So there's not a network there, right? Especially for people like me. And the people who were willing to put money in were like, okay, that sounds cool, sure. But now, we're at a point where we're ready to raise again, and I'm trying to be strategic about it. And so like where you had mentioned, trying to hold on as long as you can, for me, I feel that I'm at the point where I've held on for too long. And so I'm trying to claw back, right? Because there's people that don't see the vision. They do want to return. And where we're at right now compared to where we will be, I have absolutely no doubt that they should hold on and they should put more money in, but they're not going to. They don't get it. They don't get it. And so one, I want to find the right people, strategic people. The platform is incredible. But how do you approach a company knowing, or investors knowing that where we are right now, we need money, period. That's it, right? The problem is not the technology, it is awareness, which is solved by people in marketing. That's it. We're better than our competition, and we're more strategic about it. How do you find people that are willing to listen, that are not just more old white men, that see that, the mistakes made early on could actually be corrected by bringing the right people onto the cap table?
So I'd be interested in your thinking. It's typically viewed as a tough signal if the previous investors are not investing in the next round. We all know that. It doesn't sound like you've got Andreessen Horowitz or Excel or NEA or Khosla or Rethink or any of those in there. So I think there's a story that's tellable around that. And it sounds like you've got a story that's tellable. But look, we all think in stories. And so what you've got to do, and I'm sure you know this, you've got to paint the picture of what's up on the shining hill, And I think, smart investors will recognize going through COVID, for some industries, some companies was great. For others was a real downer and a real bummer. But if you've got, technology that works, product market fit, it's a matter of marketing. I think you've got a great story. And so being in this room and networking with other startup CEOs, who are your investors, and will you introduce me? The best thing is a warm intro.
From a founder.
From a founder
in the portfolio.
Yeah, warm intro.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the other thing, and I love the fact that you give free advice because
all day long, literally.
my attorneys have not. And when I raised, this was a small round with a goal of being much higher, but I raised money in, October of 22. And the valuation that she's like, yes, let's go with this. This is good. Now it's higher than, of course, the multiples are working. Right. And so that's the other piece too is, finding that one, do we justify the valuation? Do you hold out as long as you can? Do you raise as a safe right now? Like, what are the options again, where we're protecting the long-term value? And I do have a sense of obligation to every person who's invested. And it does keep me up at night because one, I want to prove them wrong, right? Like, I think we all have that a little bit. Like, you told me I couldn't do this, and so therefore I'm going to do bigger and better.
You're more in the markets than we are. We're not raising.
Yeah, 100%. So rule number one in this funding environment is default alive, okay? The valuation doesn't matter if you go to zero. You need to live to fight another day. So if that means raising on a safe with a lower cap to the last round, do what you need to do. Take the dilution, but build a company that's worth something for every person on your cap table, including yourself, and grow it. And you can worry about it later, right? Like, we're recapping all over the place right now. And that's okay. Default alive. Build a good company, right? Take the money that you need. What I'm observing just trending in the marketplace today is investors taking advantage from a valuation standpoint of the lack of access to capital across the markets. And what we're seeing just in terms of the trends is obviously a huge decline in the volume of investment, and valuations are now down around like 2015, 2016 numbers. So if you raised in 22, your investors know that, like, vis-a-vis the current market, you're overvalued, and they will exploit that. But again, default alive, okay? You need the capital, you go with the capital, and we will figure it out, right? Just, okay, there's an anti-dilution adjustment. Let's just keep putting one foot in front of the other. We're gonna build value, it's okay. That's what I would say.
Very common. It's very common, right?
I'm having these conversations every day, so it's fine. I've had a lot of practice, yeah. Other questions?
Hi everyone, my name is Tiana Tukes, pronoun she or hers. I am a trans woman. I also run a not-for-profit focused on LGBTQ investors. My question is about solidarity. So one of my favorite philosophers, Samantha Jones from Sex and the City, said, first come the gays, then come the women, then the industry. Oftentimes, in my experience as a trans woman, also leading a not-for-profit focused on LGBTQ investors, I sometimes there's a divide between women and LGBTQ people. But I oftentimes think that the best work is done when those two groups put their powers together. So my question to you all is, how can you convince broader groups to see the value of, like, solidarity amongst oppressed groups?
I think Sallie already crystallized it with diversity, right? The power is in the diversity. So I would lean on that message all day long.
Yeah, it's an absolute good in terms of value delivery. Absolutely. Other questions? Maybe one more?
Hi, I'm Carrie Dahm. I'm the CFO of a company called Timescale. I was at an airport this morning and they had a printed copy of the FT, which I didn't know they printed newspapers still. I opened it up and there was a section inside that was specifically for women. It was like the women's section of the FT. My initial reaction to this was just pure and utter disgust. It like really, really rubbed me the wrong way. Like, the stories were interesting, but I'm like, wow, wouldn't it be great if men also read these stories that are supposedly like intended for everyone, but like about women's issues? And like, women's issues are not just women's issues. We're more than 50% of the population. They're everyone's issues. And I guess I'm also, extraordinarily thankful to Fenwick for hosting this event, but we keep on having events and conversations among ourselves. And I welcome you to either push back and help me figure out how to frame my perspective of that FT article or like section of the newspaper this morning, or welcome you to give us some thoughts about how we go out of this meeting tonight and bring men along with us in the journey, rather than kind of continuing to talk in a room with other wonderful, amazing women, but not getting our voices heard.
Great question.
So I didn't see the FT today, so I don't know how to feel about the
the special segment. I think we've all got a cringe factor when it's you pink, shrink, you use smaller words, the razor is smaller and pinker and costs more. I think we've all been social, understandably, we cringe from that. Here's the issue. As Gloria Steinem, as I think mentioned, said, no group is ever given up power willingly. It's not another report that's needed about the power of diversity in driving better venture returns. Those reports are out there. It's not another report about, the fact that women investors outperform men investors, that women, whether they're hedge fund managers, mutual fund managers, individual investors, outperform men, yet manage just 2% of mutual fund dollars. This is an industry that's based on financial returns. You would think they would be having women flood in. So I love the men in my life. I do. I love men overall. I've been married to a couple of them. I think they're just amazing creatures. I don't know what the catalyst is going to be to get them to wake up and say, you know what, now we're going to take action. Because the research is there. We've been working with them. I think the answer is, again, we have to support each other. I think we have to support each other. I think, look, and I get it. When we launched Ellevest, Invest Like a Woman, we got something like 30% of women who were like, how dare you? How dare you? I don't need some dumbed down investing platform, where us girls are going to come together and have Chardonnay and whatever. What was interesting, they then went into the offering and came back out and said, you know what, this was more sophisticated. The portfolios were more customized. It is the only investing platform that takes into account that as a woman, I earn less, take more career breaks, my salary peaks sooner, and I die later. That seems really important. They're the only one that will let me target my money to other women. This is better. Here's the rub. Because of the way we were socialized, not one single friggin' woman thought that for women was better. Not one. And so I would put forth that we have been socialized, with a little self-loathing. We've all got some misogyny. I mean, I know for much of my career, I wanted to be in with the guys. I didn't want to be with the women because I knew that was a second-class citizen. Mm-hmm. And so I might, suggest that maybe that was a little bit of the reaction. But to my mind, we need to say, I'm good being with the women. And we can raise ourselves up. And if when the men come along, let's train our sons, let's train our daughters, let's get them to come along. But I don't know, my husband's a little bit older. I don't know if I can teach him one new thing. I mean, he's not going to change his mind. There's some group who's not going to. And so I think focusing on what we can do ourselves is the way forward.
Oh, I don't think you got anything wrong ever. I'm going to the Church of Sallie from now on. I think it's thank you. I'll join you. Yeah. I think it's a Venn diagram of you need this circle, and this circle has to help each other, and there can be 2, 3, 4, 5 of the same companies all helping. When I launched my company, if you're old enough, there was another company called Botkier, and she was the hottest brand. And I expected her to be mean to me because I was chipping away at her business. And I couldn't figure out why she was so nice to me, and still is to this day. And it really taught me that, you know what? She could have been that person that's like, you little piece of shit, you're taking all my business. And she's like, hey, how are you? Is there anything you need help with? And so we need to do that more. And coming from fashion, it's still sadly 20 years back where the women are not supporting each other. And then it is getting the men involved, and the men who want to help and support and change things. And they're there, you might start out as 1, right? 2. There's 2 people here. But, find more and how do you rope them in? Because I have found in speaking that there are people who agree and see it. It's just, again, you have to search for them. And so you have to make those 2 worlds are separate, but then there's that overlap where that can grow.
Well, and we were talking about this in the room too, right? Which is the opportunity that you have to influence the co-owners of your business now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just educate them.
Yeah, so we got purchased last year, and the owner is a 68-year-old Tunisian, French, Jewish man, and what he values or thinks perks should be are not where society is. And I have, if he wants to fire me, he's making a huge mistake. So I'm not scared of anything. So I'm like, here's what needs to change for the women, diversity, right? And I'm going at him, and he's changing. It's slower than I would like, but he's changing. And each time we meet, he's like, see, I gave more here. I'm like, that's great. We're going to keep going. And I'm not done pushing you yet. But if I were to be like, oh, he said no in the first meeting, I give up, then I would be doing a disservice to everyone that works for him. So I think it's also, sometimes we have to adjust our time horizon. And we're so instantly gratified with everything being our car, our groceries, or whatever, that these things might take more time than we wish it would take.
All right, well, thank you all so much. This has been incredible. We really appreciate you all coming and bringing your questions and your stories. We welcome you to mingle here. Let's give it up for Sallie and Rebecca. Thank you all.